Hi everyone, welcome to the first part of the tutorial for Guanches by Andrea Valeri. As always, a quick thank you to my top tier patrons first. The first part of the tutorial will be released on YouTube. For full access to the whole archive, please check out my Patreon page. If you only need the tab or notation file, then click the music notes link down below in the description, or even better, head over to Mr. Valeri's website and buy the tablature file straight from him. Andrea Valeri was one of the first young guitar players that popped up when Tommy exploded on the scene. And he has a few wonderful videos on Fingerpicking net here on YouTube. With arrangements of Sultans of Swing, I think that was the first solo arrangement I ever saw of the song, and for instance, Now We Are Free from the movie Gladiator. However, the song we are looking at today is an original song he wrote himself, and it is great. It has everything you want from a fingerstyle song. Plenty of drive, a melodic bridge part, and a foot-stomping main theme. Getting the tune to the original tempo will take some time, but there are quite a few repeating parts in this song that will speed up the learning process quite a lot. I hope you have fun with this one. Okay, straight to playing then. The guitar is in drop D tuning, meaning if you are in standard tuning, all you have to do is drop down the low E string a full step to a low D. Now, to avoid confusion with our standard regular open D string, I am still going to name this string the low E string throughout the tutorial, just to avoid any confusion. Now, if you watch the original video, Mr. Valeri plays a lengthy intro, full of blues licks and open string patterns before launching into the actual song. Now, if you watch more recent versions, he will just launch into the song straight away and he won't bother with that long intro. That is the exact same thing I'm going to do for this lesson, so we're going to keep it short and sweet. Let me play through the first verse just one time, already a little bit below concert speed, so you can get a first look of what you're up against. Here we go. Straight into a full repeat of the first verse. Short and sweet, and there is a lot of repetition. There are a lot of techniques popping up a few times, so let's have a quick look at how all of this works. You start with a D minor chord, but maybe you're going to have to fret it a little bit differently. Index finger, first fret on the high E string, middle finger, second fret on the G string, and then the pinky on the third fret on the B string, not the ring finger, because you will need the ring finger on the third fret on the D string. So this is your standard D minor chord shape. You might play it like this. Now you do it like this with the pinky, and you add the ring finger on the third fret on the D string. We start the melody by playing the high E string. We're going to pull off immediately, and we're going to play that first melody note together with the low E string. Sounds like this. Straight with the thumb pick to the D string. And then you repick the open E string. This technique has to sit really comfortable in your fingers, and it is also really easy to get down because you can create a loop that just keeps going and going until this part feels natural. So one more time, really slowly. Melody note, pull off, bass note, and repicking. And now we're just going to loop that over and over again. Until you no longer have to think about it. Once that clicks, we move on to the next section. So one more low E string bass note, and then you play 3rd fret on the B string, you're normally already holding that down, together with the bass note on the D string. And then we move to an A minor 7th chord. Open A string, middle finger 2nd fret on the D string, open G string, index finger 1st fret on the B string. And this is the melody. Nothing too difficult. Bass notes together with the B string, bass note on the D string, and then you pick an open G string before heading back to the A string. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so all that happens together, bass note, melody note, and completing the bass line. Those first 2 chords together. And now we move back to the same D minor chord, but you don't have to put it all down at the same time. We're not even going to use the high E string anymore. We're going to start with an open G string. The only notes you're going to need is the 3rd fret on the D string, again with the ring finger, and the 3rd fret on the B string, again with the pinky. You don't need the index finger in this section. You're going to start with a low E string and an open G string at the same time, hammering on to the 2nd fret and moving the thumb pick to the D string. Before you pick the 3rd fret on the B string. And you just round out the bass pattern once more. Again, previously we had a pull off. If that hammer on feels a bit awkward, again just loop it. As you can hear, that part is actually 16 notes. If you look at the bass part and the melody part together, you get 1 and 2 and 4 notes, all exactly as long. 1 and 2 and. Now, before we move into the next bar, we're going to play a small arpeggio, and this arpeggio will be repeated a few times, so you get. That arpeggio isn't too tricky. Low E string, G string, thumb pick to the D string, B string. Still holding down the D minor chord shape. We still don't need the index finger, so you can leave that out. That is the small arpeggio pattern. 1 and 2 and back to the low D string, and then to round things out with, you pick the D string, still the 3rd fret, together with an open E string. Now that sounds a little bit strange, especially when you play it really slow. It's an F natural, rubbing shoulders with that high E string, a major 7th interval. Sounds a bit weird if you really slow things down, but as soon as you pick up the pace, it will sound okay. That arpeggio, one more time. Is the full part. 1 and 2 and. And then we're just going to drop down the index finger and we're going to be back at square one, back at that D minor chord shape. Let me first play those first 2 bars back to back. To the next 2 bars. Exactly the same thing as in the first bar, minus the pull-off. So the first bar was. And now the second time is the exact same thing without the pull-off. The next chord is going to be the same picking pattern again, but over a different chord shape. We're keeping the index finger and middle finger to the same spot as the A minor 7th chord, but we're going to add in the thumb over the side of the neck on the 2nd fret. In a second, I'll show you an alternative because that thumb over the side of the neck isn't necessary. You can use a traditional fingering as well. We're sticking for the bass pattern to the low E string this time, so we're not moving to the A string. alternating with the D string, and everything else is the exact same thing as on the A minor chord. So the A minor chord in bar 1. And now this is a C chord with an E in the bass. Exactly the same picking pattern. Now, I just told you the thumb isn't necessary. You can also go for this chord shape, index finger, ring finger on the 2nd fret on the D string, leaving the middle finger open to fret the bass note down below. Sounds exactly the same. And you also don't have to drop in the full chord right away. You can first grab the middle finger on the low E string together with the C, and then add the ring finger a little bit later. And then whatever option you pick, the next chord is an F chord. Ring finger 3rd fret on the low E string, then pinky 3rd fret on the D string, middle finger 2nd fret on the G string, index finger 1st fret on the B string. We are starting again with an open G string, as in the 2nd bar, hammering onto the 2nd fret. Exactly the same picking pattern with the hammer on as in the 2nd bar. Exactly the same picking pattern. Again, if it feels tricky because of the other fingering, just loop it. Over and over until it feels natural. Then we follow that up with the same arpeggio, but there is a tricky little extra coming up. You will need the thumb again. So the arpeggio is the exact same thing. But instead of sticking to the same chord, we are going to move the last bass note on the low E string to the 2nd fret. If you're used to playing with thumb over the side of the neck, this is easy. You hold down the rest of the chord. And again, that tense interval all the way at the end. But just removing the ring finger, putting down the thumb on the 2nd fret, the rest of the chord stays in the exact same spot. Now, it is possible to play the exact same thing without using the thumb, but you will have to drop one note really quickly to make the switch. You can also play this. So after playing that 2nd fret, that A note on the G string, you're quickly going to reach for the 2nd fret on the low E string. And the only difference is that you can't let that full arpeggio sustain all the way to the end of the bar. But it is possible. So one more time, with the thumb. And without the thumb. And then from there on, it's straight back into the very first chord, and we're already launching into a full repeat of the first few bars. Before that happens, let me play those last 2 bars back to back. And maybe for good measure, just one time without the thumb. So just that one sustaining note that you have to drop to reach the low E string with the middle finger all the way at the end. Before we head into the next section, let me first play those first 4 bars all the way through. Next bar is a full repeat of the first bar. Even the first half of the second bar again is a full repeat, no new stuff. Then you end up on a low open E string. This open E string, no muting, is going to give you a brief moment of cover to move up to the 5th fret. You're going to play the index finger, 5th fret on the G string, middle finger, 6th fret on the B string, and then you need an open D string at the same time. Really important is to make sure that you mute the high E string. So lay these fingers just slightly flat so that you can mute the high E string at the same time. It is going to come into play in just a second. You're strumming this small triad. I think most of the time Mr. Valeri goes for 1/8 note and then 16 notes, but there are mostly variations each and every time. It's not the exact same thing every time. This is roughly the rhythm you're going for. That's basically all. So just 1/8 note, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's all. Strumming up and down. If you're comfortable with the pick, you can do that. I'm using mostly the middle finger. That's basically all that happens, and you're aiming for the first beat of the next bar. That first beat is difficult. This is a tricky chord. You're keeping down the index finger and the middle finger at the same spot. You're going to add in the ring finger on the 8th fret on the low E string, and then the pinky on the 8th fret of the A string. So you get 8th fret, 8th fret, muted D string, 5th fret, 6th fret, muted high E string. That's the chord. Really nice sounding chord, but not an easy voicing to quickly grab. Then you lift up the fingers to get access to the high open E string. And this is going to be your melody. The first time you strum down, you make sure that you end up on the B string. You can cheat a little bit by placing your middle finger on the high E string and just strumming down with the thumb pick. Even if you hit the E string, you're still only going to get the 6th fret on the B string as the highest sounding note. So that's the trick I'm mostly using. Just keeping the middle finger on the string, strumming down, and I'm 100% sure that I'm never going to get that open E string at the same time. This is what you're going for. Which is not hard to play once you get the chord shape down. So just strumming down all the way to the B string, then open E string, B string, open E string. That's the full part. 2 muted strums, and then you move a small bar to the 10th fret and you only play the E string, A string, and D string. So you get again 2 muted strums, and during those last 2 muted strums you move back down to open position to a full D minor chord. This is a really quick shift. There's not a lot of time. Mr. Valeri often plays a slide going down from that 10th fret to already initiate that movement going down, and then those 2 extra muted strums will hopefully give you the time you need to get to that D chord. Really slowly. That is what you're going for. One word on the position of that chord. You can see me, I'm propping up the thumb quite high when I play this chord. I wouldn't advise doing that. I would advise getting the thumb a little bit lower. Now I have a problem on my guitar. Whenever I just play this chord, I get a nasty buzz, which is this part of the E string for some reason. So I have to get some extra muting going here with the thumb. If that is not necessary for you, then getting the thumb behind the neck is going to be a lot easier to get this right, but I have no other option. Otherwise, I always get this string buzz. So I have to perform some extra tasks to get rid of that. Let me play that transition going from the lower sounding chords into that top chord. When you end up on that D minor chord, this next section, these next 2 bars, is where you are going to play the most variations throughout the song. This very first time, we're keeping it simple. You land on that D minor chord. Mr. Valeri then plays 1 open A string, and from then on, it's always alternating between the A string and the D string, and always strumming just 1 chord in between those. I'm using the back of the, or I'm not the back of the fingernail, I'm using the fingernail of the middle finger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just always the exact same thing, bass note strum, maybe a little bit slower. Always the same thing, bass note strum, all the way. You've just filled up those 2 full bars. Then in this position, you're ready to just drop down the ring finger and head straight into the repeat of the melody again. So that is the first verse all the way through. You can basically play half of the song now because there is a lot of repetition heading your way. Let me play those last 4 bars all the way through, and then I'm going to recap one more time with a slow playthrough of the whole first verse. First, the last 4 bars. After that, straight repeat of the first verse. That was it. Those were the last 4 bars. Let me try and play through the whole first verse one more time, really slowly. Here we go. If you want to, straight to verse 2, which is a full repeat of verse 1, apart from the last 2 bars. Now, before we head into new stuff and variations, take some time getting all of this into your fingers, and I will see you again for part 2 of the lesson, in which we tackle variations on the verse as well as the chorus section. See you there.